What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with Jack Simone of Harvard Houdini of How About Them Celtics. What's your preferred introduction, Jack?
You're about to say Celtics blog. I can tell you're about
I
to
was
say
gonna say Celtics vlog. Jack is a
whatever works.
former colleague, a former colleague.
Former
Um,
emphasis on former.
I know. That's the funny thing about this field is that you don't really it doesn't really matter where people work. They're still your
No,
coworkers if they cover the
yeah,
team, you know?
it's the
So you
same. You
know
still see the
Noah
same
versus
people.
Jack. Um, But we're here. We're gonna do a live episode of You Got Boston today. Haven't done one of these since Banner Night, so just an opportunity to answer questions and just chat about everything that we learned over the last few games here. Obviously, Celtics start 4-0, just beat the Bucks last night. Thought it was a pretty encouraging win, Jack. We haven't really discussed it, so we can talk about kind of what you took away from that one. But overall, it just felt like one of those wins where it just kind of shows you that you don't need everything to go right for this team to win, and I think we've seen that for a couple of consecutive games here. And I also think this
Mm.
early going here this season has shown a couple of good things for different guys. Tatum's had his moment, obviously won Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Jaylen Brown, I thought, had a tremendous second half yesterday and kind of secured that game. And then we've seen really good standout performances from the bench, whether that's Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser before he got hurt looked good in preseason. Jordan Walsh has emerged here, where that's the last thing I would have predicted, honestly, at this point in the year, that Jordan Walsh was going to be playing good rotation minutes. So we have a lot to get into, but maybe, Jack, will start with just your initial take on how this team has looked through 4 games here.
Yeah, I mean, 4-0 is hard to complain about, really. The offense has looked incredible when it's been on. A little bit of rough patches in the Pistons and Bucks games. The first half of last night was really rough. Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown just kind of were fumbling around, playing isolation ball, sort of matching the style that the Bucks decided to play, where it's just Giannis's turn one time and Dame's turn another time. But they turned it around in the second half. Tatum kind of realized it wasn't his night. Sort of deferred until the very, very end when he was just like, all right, we're up by 10. Let me try to find something, even though it was unnecessary. Jaylen Brown had a monster second half. He was like 8 of 11, which was pretty fun to see. The Pistons game was a bit weird because I think that was the first time they got guarded in a different way. But I think the Celtics have looked good. The only like real criticism I would say is I think their defense inside the arc has been a bit questionable. I think they've struggled to keep guys off of the I don't want to say offensive glass, but they are the best or one of the best 3-point defensive teams. Teams are shooting 29% against them from three, but they're shooting 15 or 60% against them inside the arc. So that's the only real thing that I think could be, improved. But the offense has been great. Tatum, despite his bad game last night, he's looked good. Jaylen Brown put it together in the second half last night. And like you said, like all of the complementary pieces have looked real good in the moments they've had to step up too.
Yeah, and how much I think the points in the paint has been a topic of conversation because we have to find something that they can improve on, and it definitely feels like it's a weakness right now. But I mean, how much of that is just fixed or substantially fixed when Porzingis comes back? Like, is that you think that's kind of the way
Very
that
true.
they're thinking about this, or how much of it is also just like the new combinations of bigs and there's just like miscommunications on that front?
I think a part of it is just math, and it's like, all right, we're gonna give up some points in the paint here, but if you guys are shooting terrible from three because we're closing out and sort of bailing out and trying to recover, in worst case you get an open look in the paint, we'll take that because it's a two versus a three, and they know that they're gonna make more threes than the other team. So I think part of it is that I think having Porzingis back will definitely help. I think Luke Cornett is useful in that regard a little bit, but he's just not even close to the same level as Porzingis. So I just think in general, we would like to focus on limiting threes rather than limiting twos because, I mean, they know they can win that way. So
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just going through some of these comments. I do think that the fact that these last 2 games weren't just like outright blowouts is better in the long term. Like you want to have those experiences. And it's fun. I thought for a second we were going to watch them just blow out like 7 consecutive teams to start the season. I was starting to get that feeling after the first two. And obviously that hasn't happened with the Detroit, come back. And then, last night was pretty close for the first 3 quarters. But it's more fun to watch and there's more to talk about it. And there's more kind of high stakes decision making. And then you have real Jordan Walsh minutes instead of like fake Jordan Walsh minutes, which is what we saw last year when he played. And so, yeah, 4-0. I think there's 3 teams that remain undefeated in the NBA right now, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Oklahoma City Thunder being the other two. And kind of what I expected, honestly. I don't think any of us expected for them to have a slow start. So I have a question here about Porzingis. And I'll just say, like, we haven't heard anything new about Porzingis unless you have, Jack, but nothing on the record, from Joe or Brad or anybody like that. But we did see him warm up yesterday and look pretty normal. Um, that's the first time I've seen him warm up or do anything on the floor besides for I saw some clips in Abu Dhabi that he was doing some stuff. Did you catch any of that?
No, I mean, there was just I just remember him working out the summer in Latvia with like DJ McClay and stuff. I don't really know if there is like you mentioned, we haven't heard much since media day. And when he said like, yeah, I've done a little bit of running, a little bit of stuff, but I'm pretty much on track. We did have the Shams Charania update today of like December is still the date, maybe sooner, but he talked about like they have a plan for him and he has to meet certain metrics based on how his calf looks, his leg looks, stuff like that. And it just kind of seems like they're in a space of we don't need him. Why rush him back? Because I still like I think they're the best team in basketball without Kristaps Porzingis,
Yeah,
and
it's
so
kind of
just having
scary.
him there, it is wild. Like I think Kristaps Porzingis coming back will make them even better. I know Sam brought it up once because he saw a tweet. It's like it's kind of having like a part-time worker hanging out on the sidelines, waiting to play when he needs to. And it's just like a two-way defensive monster who's an all-star. He's working part-time for the best team in the NBA. It's kind of a ridiculous luxury that they have just waiting.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. So I'm working on this story right now for SB Nation. It's going to be one of those stories that I get killed for. I can already feel it in advance. But basically, it's about how where people are just so upset at guys that are injury prone and like the kind of the vitriol that Kawhi Leonard has faced and Joel Embiid now and all that. And basically, the premise is like nobody wants to be injured. But I do think that there's something to be said about the fact that you can't really build around players that every season miss considerable time. And Kristaps Porzingis is one of those players, and they are not building around him. Like he is a piece of this team, and he's important. But as we saw last year, like they can win without him. As we're seeing right now, they can win without him. And I think that's the challenge with guys like Kawhi and Embiid is like those teams are structured around those stars, and they really can't sustain winning without those players. And so it ends up being like everybody's mad at those players. Whereas we have indicators to tell us that this upcoming year Porzingis is probably going to miss time again next season, and Kawhi is going to miss time because these things aren't random for the most part. Knock on wood, but they, usually the best indicator of future injuries is past injuries, and so with the Porzingis thing, like I believe the December report, but I also think they're going to take it even easier on him than they did last year. And I already remember last year, like every time he tweaked something, it was 7 games, and he talked about being frustrated that when I was in Atlanta, he was like, I've wanted to come back from all of these things, and every time they're telling me to be careful, but in the playoffs I'm gonna just go for it. And obviously then he actually got hurt. But could you see him like just after this initial thing when he comes back? Like how do you think they're gonna treat his minutes and how do you think they're gonna just view his role? Like is it gonna be a six-man type thing, or do you think they're gonna bring him back to what the initial vision was, which is, being the starting guy?
I think they're probably going to use him like they used him in the finals. Like it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's just coming off the bench playing like spot minutes, like to get a little bit warm, so he doesn't have to bang down low with like the biggest bodies in the starting lineups. It just like it doesn't make sense to because they don't need him. Like as crazy as that sounds, as much as the Celtics did deal with injuries in the playoffs because Kristaps Porzingis was out for almost all of it, and like they don't need him. They are better than most teams without Kristaps Porzingis. He is nothing more than a luxury, and you would like to have that luxury for the playoffs. So why try to push him in the regular season? I think they limit his minutes. I think they bring him off the bench, and
Yeah.
if not, I think they be very, very careful with him because Al Horford's proven more than capable of filling in the gaps, as have Cornette and Tillman and Kada for stretches. Like you really don't need to run that risk. So why bother?
Yeah, I feel that. And I feel like at the end of the day, things change and circumstances change. I don't know that anybody could have expected that Al Horford was still going to be playing at this level at this point. My favorite thing to be right about is saying that Al Horford is not washed pretty much because I feel like every time he has a couple of these bad games, there's the natural conversation of like he's 38 years old.
Yeah.
He's not going to be able to sustain this forever. Like, are we seeing the beginning of the end here? And every time people start saying that, it's almost like I'm sure he's not paying attention to it, but it's like every time it starts to pick up traction again, he goes and has a series of really good games. And, he was big in Detroit, get 17 points. And then last night, obviously, defensively, I was watching some of his defensive highlights this morning, and I was like, how is this still happening? That Al is still able to do this on both ends. What's your perspective on him at this point right now? Like, do you think that they can count on him to replicate this all season? And just Like, is it a Giannis thing? I don't know. I feel like when he sees Giannis, and there's a couple guys in the league that just bring out that playoff competitiveness in him almost.
It is unbelievable. Like, he is 38 years old and he looks 25. Just the way he plays. Like, if you told somebody who had no concept of how old any of these guys were, they just like they spent their entire life just watching like high school basketball or whatever. They had never touched the NBA and they watched it. They'd be like, all right, well, that guy's probably like 27, maybe like 28, maybe 30. Like, he's 38 years old and he's moving like he is in the prime of his career because the Celtics have done such a good job of putting him in a role where he has to do three things. He has to space the floor and shoot threes. He has to set screens and he has to guard bigs. And when that big is Giannis, the role expands and maybe he doesn't do as much on offense because he's taking on a larger, front on the defensive end, but he's fine with that. And he's proven capable of doing that. If it's Embiid, he can bang down low for a game, but they have done such a good job. Like, he's been sitting on the second half of back-to-backs for 3 years now. Like, they are limiting him as much as
Yeah.
they need to. And he looks like rejuvenated because of that, and they've done such a good job of putting him in such a niche role where he only has to do the things he's best at, and they've really done that for everybody on the team outside of JB and JT, and even them have been put in better spots because of the talent around them. That it just makes him look like, I don't like, just calling him a better player than he is isn't the right words, but it makes him look like he is 10 years younger because he doesn't have to do stuff that a normal all-star or a normal role player would have to do, whose roles, bounce around from this, that on different nights. He knows his role, he knows how to play it, and he plays it well. And he's kept himself in ridiculous shape at 38 years old. So it's both surprising and not surprising because we have had no indicators in the past X amount of years that Horford is going to slow down, other than that, run where he couldn't shoot from three. But like that had nothing to do with how bad or good he is as a player. He just had a slump, clearly. So there's nothing that has been said. Yeah.
And I think because he's older, it's like when he has a shooting slump, people are like, okay, he's washed now. But I always say this, like, shooting is inherently streaky. Even the most consistent shooters, like, everybody is going to have stretches, and the question is, how infrequent are those stretches? If they're not very frequent, then you're a really good shooter, and if they're every other day like me, then you're not. And so I feel like, Al Horford so far through 4 games, 62.5% from three. Like, that's not sustainable, but also that's pretty remarkable that that's his percentage right now, considering the fact that a couple weeks ago people were saying, preseason, he sat out the first few games. He played just in Toronto. He didn't look exceptionally good, and now he really hasn't missed a beat. So the plan worked. It is, him being 38 is forever going to be the most shocking thing. Even just standing next to him, like, nothing about him appears to be 38. So it's just one of those things. But I'm just going to scroll through these here because I sometimes people get mad when I miss a lot of these comments. So I'm just going to make sure I don't miss any. Let's talk about Jordan Walsh. Tommy here, one of the most loyal UI Boston listeners, wondering about whether Walsh will get the O'Shea Brissett energy role going forward. Was pretty impactful yesterday. And again, like, these are minutes without Hauser, which if Hauser's all good and fine, then I'm glad that this stretch happened because it did give us the opportunity to see Jordan in a more extended role. My perspective is that his ceiling is definitely higher than O'Shea's, and that's the hope, at least, because O'Shea's not in the league right now, so you want that to be the ceiling. But do you feel like there's ways where he's not as ready as O'Shea was last season, or kind of how do you compare those two?
I think he's pretty much on par where O'Shea was last season, and that's not like a shot at O'Shea. I think Jordan has just made matter. He is a lot better right spots and doing what he needs to do, and sort of accepting that he's not going to be, a primary scorer. Obviously, he needs to hit those corner shots that he wasn't able to hit last night. But I mean, I wrote about it this morning. Like, he was a part of them winning the game in that third quarter. That hustle play to keep the possession, and that put that back dunk that like kept momentum for them going into the third, and it took it from they were down 1 to up 8 in the span of 3 minutes, and then they just won the game in the fourth, and the Bucks didn't really have an answer. So I think Jordan Walsh is fully capable of playing minutes when they need him to. Obviously, the offense is still a little raw, and so you're not going to see him get regular minutes until he is ready to contribute regularly on that side of the ball. But I still do think he is fully capable of playing the O'Shea minutes, maybe a bit more than that even.
Yeah, and I'm curious because I honestly thought after Summer League, and I mean, we were both in Vegas, that was a really rough showing. I hate I hate overreacting to things. Like, I would say that's one of my hallmarks as someone covering this team. Is I really don't like overreacting to the negative. That was tough to keep his performance in perspective because there wasn't really anything positive to draw. It wasn't like just the shot wasn't falling. It was kind of just a mess across the board. And now that he has come out and said it was unacceptable, I feel like we can just, there was really nothing good there. And even DJ McClay, like talking to him after games, you could tell that he didn't even really know what to say. The fact that that's the same player that now is coming in and in a big fourth quarter minutes, putbacks, stocks on Giannis, like I did not see this coming. And it is a good reminder that everything is, things that seem really huge or seems like, this is who you are right now is just like a confidence thing a lot of times. And you find a good rhythm all of a sudden and now things are great. And, surely he got better and like, I'm sure he's worked really hard on his game. He's talked about Drew Holiday talking to him about slowing down. But there's also an element of like, clearly he's just in a better mental space. And I think that he's also more comfortable being in this role where he has to come in and not do anything super dramatic. Like he just has to come in and not make mistakes and play hard. Whereas in Vegas, he was thinking about like, I'm going to go for 15 points. And that's a whole different mindset and a whole different perspective to have. But he's been my biggest positive takeaway so far as insignificant as he is in the scheme of like a championship run, just because I did not see it coming. And everything else that we're seeing so far is not a huge shock. Like I thought Tatum was going to be good. I wasn't worried about his shooting.
Yeah.
I wasn't worried about Jaylen Brown. Like Al, I'm the biggest proponent of like, he's going to keep doing this forever until proven otherwise. So the Jordan thing, I just really didn't see coming. And so it's encouraging that a guy who was looking to be maybe like he's not ready or he's a few years away from being a few years away to all of a sudden I'm like, is he going to be in Boston all year? Like, are we even going to see him in Maine? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, there were murmurs, like there wasn't actual talk, but you could hear some whispers on Twitter or whether it was whatever. It's somebody like, do they need to wave and stretch this guy? Like it was that bad.
That was
like,
not a whisper. They were freaking out on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish they were whispering on Twitter.
Lost. He was like completely lost. So to see him turn it around,
Yeah.
I think what you said makes the most sense. Like it is completely different roles. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate you. It's completely different roles. It's like you go from trying to be the guy, trying to like focus on, okay, I have to impress these people. Just like, all right, I know I just have to, play my role next to Tatum and Brown. I just have to, get to my spots. I just have to hit threes. I just have to focus on staying open and hustling on defense. Like it's much easier to focus. And I think that's why the Celtics in general are so successful. And it goes to kind of Top Gun Zero said in the chat, like, why aren't they using Kornet from three? I think realistically, because like Kornet is so effective because he has so few things to focus on. And not that he's incapable of spacing the floor and maybe popping out from three and taking a couple, but like when you define these guys' role for Kornet example, like set good screens, roll to the rim, and be a pest on the offensive glass. Like if that is all he has to focus on, he can really focus and really, attack those skills. And that is such a luxury the Celtics have because how much talent they have. And I think that applies to Jordan, that applies to Kornet, that applies to everyone. And so when you have such a deep roster with so many good players on it, you allow them to sort of focus on those things. And I think Drew Holiday's an even more perfect example because like take him out of Milwaukee where he has to be like the secondary shot creator, where he has to step up when Chris Middleton's out and all this stuff, and then put him in a role where he is spacing the corner from three, taking the occasional three in transition, and then just being a menace on defense. Like you really just define what all these guys have to do. And Ben, that's not very nice. I think you got to be a bit more nice to me in the chat, Ben Valls. I'm trying my best out here.
The problem for me in the chat is that I like stay at the top and then I realize I'm like 15 minutes behind where the comments.
Yeah, you got to scroll all the way down.
I know. That's like I'm learning. I'm working on that because I don't want to miss anything, So then the comments are coming in, and I'm still at like 5:31, and that's not where people are talking about anymore. Not sure about this Jack guy yet. We'll see if he'll renew his contract after today.
Come on.
It is really nice. I'm used to getting up. I don't know. He does it. Oh, you?
Yeah.
I think I still have like rib damage from the 30 times that I've run into one of your screens. Like I actually.
I'll take that.
So.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, well, Jack and I, we are going to play 1v1. For those of you that don't know, there was a video out there. Didn't make Jack look the best. He's still kind of rehabilitating his public image.
It wasn't my fault. And the video didn't capture that it wasn't my fault.
He's in a 2A. So we'll see. If I feel like the one-on-one will be good enough, maybe some footage will be released again. So we'll see. It is a tough matchup for me. I'm not going to lie.
It's gonna be released.
It's a tough matchup for me.
There will be a camera there. I that is the only way I'm playing is if there's a camera there.
I don't do well with the physicality, so we'll see. A couple questions here about just like tough matchups. I think people are already talking about OKC and OKC. I feel like it was the most popular analyst pick going into the season. So many people have OKC Celtics in the finals. Obviously, they were the number one seed in the West last year, and I think they had the best offseason of anybody. except for maybe the Celtics brought everybody back. But just bringing Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein, I love those moves. I feel like they didn't really lose much. No offense to Josh Giddey, but I don't think he was a great fit there. And then also some questions. I can't find the question now, but just about what the Celtics record is going to be. And I hate predicting records because I feel like I whatever I say is going to be wrong. But let's hear your take on just what the worst case scenario would be for the Celtics as a finals matchup. Like who right now would be the most difficult opponent, and then also just how you forecast the overall record being. I don't know if you have did you set in stone a preseason like record prediction?
I said 59, but I think I underestimated how good they would be on the repeat year. And so I think 59 is way too low. I think they can win a lot more than 59 games. I put that, forget when I guessed that. I predicted every single game of the Celtics season. So I can look back. Let me see. Predicting every game of Celtics season. So I might already be wrong because I think I predicted a loss within the first 4 games of the year.
Okay.
So I had them. No, I said 4-0. My first loss was actually the Pacers. So I could still be right. My first loss prediction was tomorrow night in Indiana. I think I wildly underestimated how good this team will be. I also don't like predictions, but I do think they could win even more than they won last year. Like I don't know how many it'll be, but I think they are an even better team than they were last year, regardless of Porzingis being out, just because I think a lot of people underestimated, like, last year was the first time that group played together ever. It was Joe Mazzulla's first, full season as the head coach, not being thrown into the fire and forced to adapt on the fly. It was the first season Drew Holiday ever played in a Celtics uniform. The first season Kristaps Porzingis ever played in a Celtics uniform. Roles were shifted. Peyton Pritchard was thrust back into the rotation after a year of being out of it effectively. And now you have a new year, a new, chance for these guys to develop even more chemistry, to show off how much they've grown together. I think they're a better team than they were last year somehow. And so I think they could win more games than they won last year, which was 64. So I think 65 plus.
Okay. I have them for like 60. I don't know if I put it down officially, but I think there's going to be some stretches there where they, just inevitably are going to lose some games. It's so hard to see that right now, but I think it's inevitable. I don't know. They have a interesting schedule coming up here. A couple of road games, Indiana, 2 Charlotte games, which I'll be at, and then Atlanta. So all 4. I mean, all these games are winnable, obviously, but all 4. Could see them coming away with all 4 wins. The Pacers are due for one. They haven't looked great this season, and they've always given the Celtics a tough matchup. So we'll see how that one goes tomorrow. Before we talk about, I still want to hear your finals pick for kind of what the worst case would be. Just a quick message from our friends over at Game Time.
There's few things I prefer doing than attending an NBA game or sporting event live, and you can purchase tickets to Celtics games or any other sporting event, concert, or show with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Time, you can actually see the view of the court or stage from the seat that you choose to purchase, and you can buy tickets with just one click. There are lots of cool features. There's a lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, or theater. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
So let's hear, Jack. Who's the worst case scenario as far as who has a real chance? Celtics coming out of the East. I'm going to just say that for now because nobody on the East has. I think we're too early to really figure out who are the formidable contenders here, because the ones that we were talking about in the offseason haven't looked great so far. Who out of the West do you think is the biggest challenge for this team?
I do think it is OKC. I was coming into the season still saying it was the Nuggets, but they've looked really, really bad through the first few games of the season. So I've got some actual concerns about their ability to get that far. So I think OKC is probably the safe bet. I just think they have the best all around. I don't think they have like like, I think Jokic is the best player. I think Luka and Kyrie is probably the best duo, but I think there are the fewest holes in the OKC roster top to bottom. And so I think that's sort of the reason why they'd be the best. I think they have a great defense. Chets look amazing through the first few games. I think Caruso's a perfect fit. I think Hartenstein will be awesome. When he comes back from his injury. I think there are some other teams, like I think Minnesota could be okay, but they're looking a little wonky. Just like the Randall Fitz doesn't seem amazing to me, even though I do think he gets too much of a bad rep. The Lakers have looked really good to start the season, as have the Suns and the Mavs. I think are always a threat too, but I think OKC is just the easiest pick because they've looked pretty dominant so far.
Yeah, they do seem like the easiest pick, and it's so hard to analyze teams like a weekend. I feel like I go back to previous seasons and people will get so high about like the Pelicans, and then they ended up not even making the playoffs or what. There's always those early successes that a lot of it is based on schedule or early chemistry or injuries or things. So it's hard to tell, but I think OKC is a good guess, a good prediction. Suns, we'll see. I'm still not sure about the Suns, but on paper they should be a lot better than what we saw last year.
Yeah.
I even feel like the Lakers, if I know it's early on, but if Anthony Davis has like an MVP season and yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but they're another like sneaky contender team that I think could pose a challenge. I mean, we're talking about a team that didn't do anything last year. So,
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I feel less. Yeah, and I'm just thinking like the really physical type teams that they might really a big front court player that does a lot of damage. Like that's where I feel like the Celtics can have weaknesses. But I understand there's also just a level of confidence that's not going to be shaken by any of these names, at least right now when we're talking about a fully healthy Celtics team and all these teams that really haven't shown that they can do all that much. I do feel like the Mavericks have been a little disrespected just like nationally. Like nobody's talking about them like they're the finals team. But could you see them making another finals run this season?
Definitely. I think Clay's a better fit than people give him credit for too, because like everyone took that 0 of 10 shooting game at the end of last season and said like, oh, this guy sucks now. Like bad shooting games happen. I still think Clay is a fine NBA player. He's not all-star Klay Thompson, but I still think he's a very high level role player at the very least. And he is a better shooter than anybody that was on that Mavericks team in the finals last season. Like, I mean, I was parading it all throughout the finals. I thought it was embarrassing that the last year's version of the Mavericks made it to the finals because of how little shooting they had around Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. Like, just key in on those guys. You kick it out and you live with PJ Washington and Derrick Jones chucking a million threes. And it didn't work at points during the first 3 rounds because those guys got hot. But now that you have Klay Thompson there, now that you have a little bit more reliable spacing at the very least, even if it's just one guy, like that makes all the difference sometimes. So I think they're a good team. I think Luka's one of the best players in the league. I think Kyrie's one of the best players in the league. I think they have a shot. I think the Mavericks are a bit more well-equipped to beat them this year in terms of experience, in terms of talent. I think there are other teams who could take them out, but I don't think it's impossible that they make it back for sure.
Yeah, and I'm a rare Boston person who really likes Klay Thompson, so I'm rooting for a great season for him. I feel like he's not a popular character in my life. Like everybody I know does not like him. I don't know. My roommates don't like him. My brother hates him. Not hate, but like they don't.
I guess
they're not rooting for him certainly. So I feel like I live in this bubble where people are not big Klay Thompson fans. But I was just scrolling through the chat because I wanted to go through this question because naturally we have to talk about Peyton Pritchard, and I saw this sentiment floating around on Twitter today, and I'm not sure what my answer is. And I'm very high in Pritchard, but the question here from Birkin is: can we see PP as the ultimate Drew replacement as he slowly moves towards retirement in a couple of years, or is Pritchard's size ultimately a concern? So not to do a hard pivot here, but I do think we should talk about how Pritchard has been exceptional here these last few games. He's averaging 20.7 points through these last 3 games. He's hit like 18 of his last 26 threes. Nobody on the team has had more threes than him this season. And so he's not going to keep this production up, but obviously what we've seen so far is super encouraging. But is there a world where, because I've always thought like I can see him eventually becoming a starting guard, but it's never been in my head in green. Like I don't see it in Boston. And I guess my question to you is there a world where it is in Boston and I don't have the vision yet and I need to just get there?
I think maybe. I think maybe, like realistically, you talk about just the financial situation this roster is in with, maybe not wanting to keep this top 5 together past next season or the season, whatever. Like you're going to inevitably have to make some financial decisions. You have Pritchard on an amazing contract. He's probably going to definitely going to make more on his next deal at this rate. There's no reason, in my opinion, that he can't start next to Derek White or Jaylen Brown or whoever. At the very least, be a spot starter. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he is wildly underrated in general. I know you share the same sentiment, but he is small. He is never going to be like an elite defender, nowhere close to like Derek White or Drew Holiday, but he's not a bad defender by any means. Like he hustles, he's in the right spots. He knows how to use his size to his advantage, or at least mitigate some of the potential downfalls that come with being just a shorter guard. I think you would probably ideally like him most in that 6-man role, but there's no reason that he can't be a starter on a great Celtics team, in my opinion.
Okay, that's the ultimate belief, because I feel like that's been the hang up for a lot of people who even believe in him, is like, can you do this on a championship team? And I do think we have to, like, what I want to look into is like what comparisons are there of guys his size with his physical limitations actually, being on a championship team. And that is the question. And I think he acknowledged it yesterday. Was it that he said, I know that there's limitations, like I can't bang down low. Like he's never going to be able to do that the same way that other guys can't. And it's unfair. It's not like it's in his control. But yeah, this is a good point. Like he wasn't really playing against Dallas. Like in Game 5, he only played 4 seconds. We talk about that all the time, but he was not in the rotation. And so I guess I don't know what the answer is. I would love to see it happen, because I would hate a physical limitation being the reason why somebody can't be a role that they're talented enough to be in. But I also think like a lot of these comments about how he struggled last season, like my expectation is that he's a lot better, and he's going to be better this year than he was last year. And maybe that's not the case, but we'll see. I also just need to acknowledge this comment. I hate to do this, but every time I get excited about a player, this is about Klay Thompson, I get accused of having a crush on them, and I always let it go. So this is not to throw this person under the bus, but I can only have positive takes on people, and they're always going to be mad because I cover the Celtics and I cover the NBA. I know, so I have to acknowledge it. I don't have a crush on Klay Thompson. I do love 3-point shooters, and I did love the Warriors when I was in high school. So I'm always going to be drawn to 3-point shooters. My dad was a 3-point shooter. I, on a good day, am a 3-point shooter. So if I have a bias, that's what it is. But I can't let these comments go on any longer. I was getting them in the finals last year, every single day, about Jaylen Brown. Yeah, you can see my WNBA coverage too, and you can see that I have players that I like. So anyways, I had to just say that, because I always let these comments go, and you guys can keep saying them, but it's only fair that I defend myself once in a while. And I probably wouldn't do it if Jack wasn't here, but gave me the confidence. So okay, let's quick message from our friends over at Prize Picks, and then I just want to talk about if you do have any concerns about this team before we wrap up here.
Prize Picks is the best way to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You can just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play. So even if one of your players gets injured, if your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinion into real money all season long on Prize Picks. I'll be looking to make some picks ahead of NBA opening night next week. In the meantime, download your app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Okay, so I just want to talk about if there's anything that has stood out to you as an area of concern as I'm continuing to see the fallout of my Klay Thompson comments, who I just want to say one last thing on Klay Thompson, 37 points in a quarter. If you love basketball, you enjoyed that moment as a basketball fan. And some of us were impacted clearly more than others here. That's all I'm going to say on Klay Thompson. Okay, so any concerns, Jack, for you about this team from what we've seen through 4 games here? Anything that you didn't foresee that it maybe is a little bit of a challenge?
I think the defense hasn't been quite as locked in as maybe you wanted to see. Obviously, the offense has been amazing, and defense hasn't necessarily been bad, but they are giving up a ton of points in the paint. I think the 3-point defense has been good. It's kind of like what I talked about at the very start of the show, but it just seems like they are. It seems like they're selling out almost too much to the 3-point line. Like I remember I forget it was the Pistons game or the Bucks game, but there was a game where Jayson Tatum was just kind of like waltzing through coverages. It seems like they're selling out for the threes almost too much, and that is like leading to open shots inside. And I mean, Jaylen Duren and Isaiah Stewart and even Brook Lopez at times were just like murdering the offensive glass and sort of killing them inside. And I don't think that's because the Celtics don't have the size or the personnel. Like, I don't think it's a like, oh, Al Horford's old and they don't have another big, like, blah, blah. Like, I don't think that's the problem. I think they're just focusing so much on, taking away the 3-point shot, and it's working. And the math tells you that's great, right? Like the math tells you that'll win games. But like to your point, when you get in a team or playing a team like if they play Anthony Davis or if Joel Embiid is magically healthy in the playoffs, like you need to be able to adjust your defense a little and maybe focus some more on the post guys. So I do think it is a little bit like, not concerning maybe isn't the right word, but just like I would like to see the defense lock in a bit more because they have been, I don't know where they rank in terms of like how many points per game they're giving up so far. Like I don't know where they rank in that retrospect. They currently are giving up only 109 points per game, which I say only, but that is still top 10 in the league. So it's not bad. But there's room for improvement. Like I don't think there is any one spot where the Celtics are like, oh my God, they're really bad. Like they're just too good as a basketball team. But if there is one room for improvement, I would say like focus a bit more on protecting the paint because I think that's been pretty meh.
Yeah, and honestly, like it is hard to look at team-wide stats this early on because then you talk about like the fourth quarter of the Knicks game, the fourth quarter of the Wizards game. Like these are, it skews all of these
Yeah.
statistics because those units didn't look great also, like those late game units. Whereas last year, I feel like all the stats were padded when you had the end of bench guys because Pritchard was out there kind of running the show. I feel like these last few games where there were blowouts, like those probably didn't help the numbers, but we'll see as we get more games under our belt here, like what things look like and where there are some limitations. Certainly defense, like you don't want there to be any drop off because it was such a strength last season. I still think that with the Celtics team, it's maybe the most underrated component of their success is just how consistent they were defensively, how little things they had to exploit. Everybody talks about the offense and the shooting and all, the many all-stars and everything. But there was a point last season where I was actually like, this is what's really setting them apart from these other teams is this just lack of mistakes across the board. And so there's going to be changes this year because the rotations are a little bit different. Even Tillman playing more minutes or, things like that. Like there's going to be some adjustments being made there. But overall, I would agree. I would agree with you. It's a little too hard to say where things are at. And if there is something to be worried about, Joe, I know talked pregame or postgame yesterday. He started his postgame by kind of disputing a transition stat that Bobby Manning asked him about. I think like kind of just pointing to the fact that it's hard to draw a lot out of this right now. But from a personnel standpoint, I thought that Tatum has looked good defensively. I thought that Jaylen Brown opening night kind of set the tone with Jalen Brunson and forcing him into that 8 seconds violation and just showcasing that he's not going to miss a beat here with all the intensity that he approached last season with. And then Derek White truly had, I think, some of the most impressive defensive plays that I've ever seen in these last few games. Like the block where he recovered from guarding Dame to then switching on to Giannis. Like
Incredible.
I don't even know how he got off of him in time. And then to get that block on Giannis, I feel like we should be talking more about that play. But that was to me just incredible. And I rewatched it this morning because I took like a video of the Jumbotron because I missed it in real time. And I was like, that is one of the best blocks I've ever seen, I think, just because of the difficulty of it. So I'm just going to answer this one last question because I've skipped a few of these questions about Davison and Springer. And I know, Jack, you said you're planning on being in Maine a little bit more this year too. So maybe we'll get to check out one or both of these guys, although I don't expect too much Springer in Maine at this point. Do you see a world where either of these guys break through in Boston? Do you think that Davison, Springer, Drew Peterson, even, who's somebody who looked good in preseason, but it's a two-way, like, is there a pathway forward for them here? Because Jordan Walsh clearly has separated himself from the pack.
Also, Pete, I don't think anybody froze. I think it was you, but I don't know. I don't think so. Like, as much as I'd love to say, like, JD can get in there and the shot has looked better, it definitely has. And I like Springer's defense. Like, it just doesn't seem like either of them are NBA caliber players, right? And that's not fair to Springer because he has played in the NBA. He's shown he can be a defensive guy. He's shown he can attack guys at point of attack. He guarded Curry. I remember that was the whole thing when he got traded to Celtics. Like, oh, he just guarded Curry last game. He'll do something here. Like,
and Luka, that was the other one.
And Luka, he just guards everybody, but he just looks so spacey when he's on the floor. Like he just looks lost. Like he looks like he's panicking at all times, and it just I don't think either of them will ever play real minutes like regularly for the Celtics, I should say. I would love to be proven wrong. I would love for them to, magically turn into this amazing shooter, this amazing, defensive IQ guys. Like I just don't really see it. I think Drew Peterson has a better case. I think Anton Watson has a pretty good case, even though he's a rookie. I think Shireman, despite the fact that he has been rocky when he has played, I think you can see the outline of a good, high IQ player there. The other two, I don't see it all coming together with the Celtics. I think they could do with an opportunity on another team. I just don't see it happening in Boston.
Yeah. You've gotten quietly like high on Drew Peterson recently. I remember at the beginning because I'd seen him in Maine. Yeah, and it was just like some things I liked about his game, and I came back to Boston. I was like, you guys got to lock in on Drew Peterson, and I didn't have a lot of suitors at that point, but I feel like preseason he showed the game kind of slowed down for him, and he looked comfortable. And again, so much of it is mental. The same way that Jordan looked so rattled in Vegas, Springer looks rattled right now. Like even yesterday, he played for a few minutes. He didn't catch the ball once when someone passed to him. Like he just seems like he's really in his head. And to me, that doesn't mean that that's who he is. It's where he is right now. And I don't know why exactly. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, or if he doesn't feel like, he's things are going well for him. I'm not exactly sure, but he looked really, I mean, in summer league, he looked way ahead of Jordan. And so it's pretty stunning how this stuff changes so quickly with a little bit of a different environment and a little bit of different expectations. So, and I agree with this comment. I think not part of this comment, I think with JD, like it really is going to come down to his 3-point shot. If he can shoot, I think that he has a spot in the NBA, and if he can't, then he doesn't. And it's kind of as simple as that. And then with Springer and Peterson and these guys, like, again, you can't draw too much from just a couple minutes here. So, like, if Springer got 15 minutes last night, like the same rotation that Jordan got, first quarter, third quarter, like real minutes, like I'm curious how he would have looked, because you're getting a completely different opportunity at that point. But he's just been fouling a lot too. That's something else that I've noticed is like he gets these matchups, he's almost overly excited to show that he's ready to play good defense. So
and then
people know. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Birkin, the Peterson handle issues things, like I couldn't disagree more. I thought every single time Peterson got put under pressure in the preseason, like he made a play at the end of every shot clock. When those Celtics lineups with Peterson in were getting lost at the end of the clock, like he was the one to get a bucket. He was the one to drive to the mid range, pull up, find a spot. So I think Peterson is the most NBA ready of the two-way guys right now. Maybe outside of Watson, but even Watson in the preseason looked a little bit jumpy. I don't know. I think he's impressed me just with the way he has handled everything. Obviously, he needs to put on a little bit more weight. That's always going to be the thing until he does it. But I don't know.
Yeah, I will just say to Birkin's point, Summer League, he really couldn't dribble. There was moments where they didn't have a lead guard out there. And it was really difficult. He was doing that thing that I do when I'm in trouble. He was like turning his back and just dribbling down the court. And I was like, you don't love seeing that on an NBA court. And so I get that thing. It's weird because a lot of the observations that we saw in Vegas are almost completely inverted for what we saw in preseason. And it's like preseason is more closely resembles what a role on the Celtics would be. It's you're on the Boston Celtics, you're playing NBA competition. Summer League is a little bit of a free-for-all. Like there's a lot of guys that really have had, like Sam Hauser did not have a good Summer League. Like there's a lot of guys that go out to be really good. And so that's why it's a good reminder, because people were freaking out at Summer League. It's a good reminder that it's not always the best indicator for things. But in any case, I think all of these end of bench guys, we're probably not going to see a lot of them in Boston outside of Jordan. Even Jordan, I think he's playing more minutes and he's going to play most of the season. So people should probably expect to be a little disappointed if they're hoping to see these minutes continue. And then the Springer trade rumors, I know Jake Fisher had a report about it. I haven't seen anything beyond that, so I don't want to speculate. But he certainly seems like if there's a midseason trade, I wouldn't be shocked if they traded him. Like, it doesn't seem like he's actively involved in the plans right now. But I haven't heard that from anybody, so I don't want to ever put that out there. Like I have a reason to speculate that someone's going to get shipped out because we don't know that.
For sure, yeah.
And there is a reason they brought him in. Like, there's something that they did like about him, but I don't know that he is shown that thing is not true yet, if that makes sense. But we'll see. One thing I'll just comment on is Lonnie Walker is not on the main roster. And it is kind of funny because just a few weeks ago we were doing these lives and I feel like every other comment was about Lonnie Walker. So Lonnie Walker is over. He was fun to watch. He gave us something to talk about in September where we probably wouldn't have had much to talk about. And
you were ready to bet your life on Lonnie Walker when they signed him. Celtics signed Lonnie Walker and Noah, or I texted you like, oh, what do you think? And you were like, I think this, and I go, I don't know if I'll make the team. And you texted me something along the lines of like, I will bet you anything that he makes.
I know it was bad. It was bad. I knew not to put it online. I knew not to put it online because I knew it was a little bit of an erratic tape. You do have the receipts.
I'll tweet it out.
Okay, what I will maintain this though is he is going to be a good NBA player. I don't know. Sure. I don't think it's going to be in Boston. You were right.
I just don't think
I was wrong. You're not going to get this many more times. So relish in the moment. Rare W for you. So we'll see. We'll see if he finds another opportunity elsewhere. Bobby's little sister. I can't.
Is that you? Are they talking about you?
Yeah, I think they're talking about me. That's a common comment that Bobby and I get on our YouTube. So
Bobby's little sister is so funny.
Also funny we're the same age, but I'll take little sister.
Is he older than you or are you older than him?
No, I think we're literally the same age. Like, we might be. I don't remember when his birthday is, but we're both 26.
Okay.
So
okay.
I'm Jack's older sister.
No, don't do that.
So okay. In any case, we appreciate Jack for being here. We'll see if we'll have him back or not. It's going to depend on how the one-on-one game goes. If my ego's bruised, which it probably will be, then I might need a break. But thank you, Jack, for tuning in. I'm going to be in Charlotte from Thursday to Saturday. So we'll have practice on Thursday, and then we'll have games Friday, Saturday, back-to-back against the former Celtics assistant Charles Lee, former Celtics Grant Williams. So there's a whole lot of former Celtics in there. Our favorite, Jermaine Buckner, one of the assistant coaches who was always very kind to us as we were getting started last year. So a lot of former Boston faces in Charlotte. I'll be on the ground. I'll do a couple of these shows from there just to give you guys – the whole point of this is to go behind the scenes, especially when I'm on the road, which I plan on doing as much as possible this year. So in the meantime, subscribe to You Got Boston. You can do so on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all that. And then just, Jack, anything you want to plug of anything you're working on, anything that is
just watch How About Them Celtics podcast. You can follow Spotify, Apple, the YouTube as well. Make sure to subscribe there. My written works at hardwoodhoudini.com. And my Twitter's on the screen, Jack Simone NBA. So yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Can you foreshadow a story that you're working on that maybe the viewers will be interested in?
Yes, I'm working on an Xavier Tillman story, and it should be out. It should have been out sooner, but I'm waiting for the right moment now at this point. And last night was not the right moment, so we're gonna keep on the brakes and keep pushing because I love X. X is one of my favorite people. So I'm gonna drop that in the next week or so, hopefully.
Okay, great. I look forward to reading that. Jack on him for a one-on-one, and I do think he's probably the best interview or one of the best interviews on the team. Wow, Jack just left. That's crazy. Okay, well, thanks everybody so much for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll be back post-game with the Garden Report tomorrow. I didn't kick you out. You left.
Everything just turned off. My mic and camera all just turned off at once. I was like, what is happening?
Sure. It wasn't me. I
believe you. I know it was me.
So Jack will be on pregame tomorrow on How About Them Celtics. We'll have the Garden Report postgame after Celtics Pacers. Enjoy the rest of your nights, and thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks, Jack, for